first one.
Yeah.
He was on a couple weeks ago. And then Future.
Hello everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to this workshop, and my name is Dr. Duncan McCollum. So a lot of you heard me on the radio, I guess.
Yes.
Was it yesterday or Saturday?
Yesterday.
Wow, that's awesome. I know that I better do a workshop right after, because other than that, people have something else to do, don't they? So yeah, I have a show every one Saturday a month also on Stepping In. It's a Jackie Tucker, she's a nurse. And so she gave up one of her shows, and so Carol, who you'll meet later, and I both co-host it. And pretty much we're always talking about fixing the cell to get well, and cellular health. And Dr. Future heard me, and we talked briefly. He met me at the radio show and said, why don't you come on the show? So it was really fun. Those guys
that was impromptu?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, you guys did great.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know what? He just asked questions, and like I always say, if I don't know the answer, I'll make something up. Hopefully, that's not true. If I don't know the answer, I'll at least research it and look for it. But so tonight, what I really want to do now, what interested anybody most about what we talked about? Because we talked about a lot of different things, from the microbiome, the bug in the gut, the ketogenic diet, where the ketones, your brain loves fat, it loves to burn fat. Cancer cells can't live off fat. We talked about diet variation. I'll kind of go over all of it tonight, but is there any particular thing in anybody's mind? Yes?
On the variations of diet,
yeah.
What's optimal as far as switching from one to the other, like 2 days, 3 days, or is there different optimal?
Great, I'll go into that. Thank you, and remind me if I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
I'm interested in the Restore that you mentioned. And then the other thing is there's a Dr. Morris that invented good microneurovinomes in capsules. I'm interested in those two things.
Oh, the one I talked about. The one that I spoke of on the
yes.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
This is from the radio.
Thank you.
I took
okay. Shane Morris, yeah.
I was interested in the detoxing
Perfect.
procedure.
Yeah.
You know, what piqued my interest was using the fats as your burning fuel rather than protein, because as I've gotten older, I can't eat the amount of protein that it just doesn't, it takes away my energy. And you're talking about how it's a fuel that is a hot fuel. That piqued my interest, right? Yeah, that's really true. You know, so we're going to talk about all of those things in the kind of the guise of getting well, or living as healthily as we can, as long as we can. You know, the Dr. Papa, who's a guy that I work with directly, and I mentioned him on the show several times. His basic statement is fix the cell to get well. You know, so basically, I'm just going to go into a little bit of a slideshow here to get us to a point to where I could try to, I'm not going to bore you with too many slides, but I want us just to get the idea. Now, really the key is what you do with the information you hear tonight. If it makes sense, you do something about it. Start somewhere, you know. A lot of times we go and I'll talk to people or staff, or even my wife and I will talk about some great idea we have, and then the next day it's like business as usual, you know. So hopefully you'll have one thing that you can do to take away. So think of like maybe 3 things that you write down that you go, I specifically want to do something about this, and then we'll see what we can do to help you. So what's really interesting is when I take a look at the health of our country, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I haven't seen the health quotient get better too much. You know, I mean, we're rated 50th in the world for health out of all of the industrialized nations, and we're only 4% of the population, and we consume 50% of the meds. So I was just thinking about this today. You know, Newton's law of physics, or whichever one it is, wherever there's an action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, it seems like wherever there's a disease, there's an equal and opposite drug to cover it up. But they're pushing back and forth, and they're not getting to the cause of the problem. And tonight, I really want to get to the cause of the problem. We know what it is. It basically comes down to cellular inflammation. So whether you have any of these symptoms or all of them,
or some that aren't listed here, they've been talking about this for years, that chronic inflammation is driving chronic disease. So heart disease, cancers, Alzheimer's disease, autism, all of that stuff has to do with inflammation. So we'll get down to the core of it and the questions you guys asked are exactly what we can do to turn it around. And there is a method to it, and there's some really amazing success. So when we talk about fix the cell to get well, I mean, that's really the key. If you don't get anything tonight, get that, okay? So here's a human cell, and the human cell has a border called a cell wall, and then a whole bunch of machines in there. It's almost like a body. You've got a heart, you've got a lung, you've got, you know, a kidney and livers, all that different type of stuff. Well, your cell has all these little guys in there that produce life. We have, it's like 80 trillion of them. We have over 100 trillion bugs in our stomach, in our digestive system. We have more bugs, or microbiome. That's just, micro means small, biome means life. So a small life is what they fancy name for bacteria, viruses, or whatever. And so, but in our cells, we have these power plants, these things that nutrition gets into the cell and generates life. And if toxins get into the cell, it's going to squelch life. So when we look at the cell wall, what it's really made up of is just oil. It has 2 layers of oil with water in the middle, and that's just the cell membrane. And things have to pass through there. Energy's made, and then the toxins come out. That's as simple as it is. So if we take a look at this is a very expensive rendition of a human cell. So if I pass it around, be careful with it, please. But so the cells, all cells in our body have receptor sites on them. You know, I've heard it said that there's 40 million receptor sites for estrogen alone on one cell. How fathomable is that? Okay, so now every one of these is specific to one hormone, one vitamin, one mineral. This one might be estrogen, this one might be testosterone, you get the idea, thyroid hormone and such. So when the cell walls swell up, and we'll go up to why they do, it's almost like getting poison oak on your face. So your face swells up. Anybody ever had poison oak besides me that bad? And then you can't see. I go, well, I have eyes, I just can't see, and I'm really irritated, and I'm really not happy, and, you know, don't talk to me. So when these cells get inflamed from toxins, from heavy metals, from molds, and things we'll go into in a little bit, they swell up, and they no longer get the nutrition into the cell. Not only that, if these little delicate receptors start to get eaten up by toxins, you know, going around, it's like almost like you have turpentine on your hand and you keep rubbing it. You'll get away with it for a while, but eventually your skin's going to get irritated, right? So when these cell walls are subjected to toxins for too long of a time, they just become very inefficient. And I'm going to give you an example that I think everybody will be able to follow on this, because it has to do with insulin and diabetes. And if you get this picture, you'll get the whole thing, okay? So let's say here's a cell, and we know that sugar has to get into the cell to make energy, right? Does that make sense to everybody? Sugar gives us energy, that's how we produce life. And in the cell, there's a carburetor or a machine in there. I'm going to throw out the word because some of you may have heard it. It's called mitochondria. It's really big in science right now. Mitochondria, you can spell it. It's like the carburetor on your car. So you all got here in a vehicle. Only one little part of that vehicle burns fuel to push all of that huge amount of metal here. In your cell, there's one little guy in there called the mitochondria that gobbles up the sugar, makes energy, pushes your life forward, and like any other car, there's exhaust that's made. It's not a perfectly 100% efficient machine. So every time we make energy, we have exhaust in our body. Make sense to you? Yeah? Okay. So imagine that this is a beautifully run machine, and you have a bloodstream here, You have a liver, which is like a big oil filter or air filter in your house or in your car. Then you have clean blood that comes out. And then you have your digestive system where all the waste goes. That's kind of how the body works. So we get food into our bloodstream, and I won't go into how that happens, but then that food particle in the guise of a hormone or a vitamin or a mineral or a fatty acid or amino acid, all those fancy things, knocks on the door of the cell on a specific door that only that particular thing can go in, and it's let in, and then it does its job. As a byproduct, there's toxic waste that has to get out. It goes back into the blood through the liver. The toxins go out this way, and then clean blood comes around. And it's just a beautiful thing. I mean, the human body is amazing what it does. So, just like any oil filter in your car or air filter in your house, it's going to get plugged up, right? So if you don't change the oil filter in your car, you're going to have trouble. Now, our liver gets plugged with things like processed food, with chemicals, with heavy metals, with mold, with gluten, with inflammatory food, with food additives, whatever it is, it gets plugged up. And usually it will work perfectly for a lifetime, but oftentimes it gets plugged and it no longer cleans the blood. So if I had a bucket of water and I was washing a wall with that bucket of water and I never cleaned the water and I kept putting the sponge in there, pretty soon I just got dirty water everywhere. That's what happens to the liver and the other detox systems. So pretty soon, it's almost like getting turpentine on your hands. Those cell walls get broken down. The oils of the cell walls start to decompose. These things can no longer communicate, and you now have a problem. Here's the problem. Sugar needs to get into the cell. What hormone lets sugar in the cell? Anybody know? From your pancreas? Insulin. So insulin opens, knocks very politely on this one particular sliding glass door. Oh, it's insulin, we'll let you in. Sugar goes in, makes energy, then the toxins go out, and it's a great thing. But as this cell wall gets hard to hear, one insulin won't do it anymore. So now you need more insulin. Pretty soon your pancreas is just putting out all the insulin it could possibly do as fast as it's just pumping it. But the cell walls are so bad that we have something called, anybody know the name of it, when our body cells are no longer able to take in insulin? Yeah, it's insulin resistance and then diabetic. Right, exactly. 50% of the US population are either insulin resistant to some degree or true diabetics, okay? So now what happens when you go to the doctor and they say, well, you don't have enough insulin to open that really rusty, crudded up sliding glass door? What do they want you to do?
Take insulin.
Take more insulin. So now you have more man-made insulin, and that will work for a while, but eventually it doesn't work, and then what ends up happening? Well, what happens to diabetics ultimately?
Oh, all kinds of terrible things.
Yeah, it's the #1 cause of preventable blindness, one of the #1 cause of cancer, colon cancer, feet amputation, preventable blindness. So 50% of our population are heading down this path, right? So the million-dollar question, is this cellular resistance only specific to insulin, or might it make sense that other hormones might have trouble getting into the cell?
Others.
Absolutely. So now you have a woman who turned 40, and you guys, someday that will happen. You turn 40, and you're starting to have hormone issues, maybe hot flashes, and the other kind of myriad of things that happen. You go to the medical doctor and they say you don't have enough insulin. What are they going to give you?
Hormones.
Yeah, but what's happening is you've already got the insulin that your body is making that should normally get into the door just like this, but now your body's pumping out as much insulin as it can, and it's not enough anymore, so now you end up with medically made insulin. Thyroid hormone can go down the same road. So now you're on insulin, hormones, thyroid hormones, because you don't have enough thyroid, and now guess what all of these overabundant hormones and things are doing to the rest of your body? You think it's good for them or bad for them? Absolutely, because they're so smart. But what specifically is the problem with too much insulin in the body? What's the ultimate demise of people with too much insulin in the body? It's called diabetic type 3. Anybody know the other name for that?
Alzheimer's.
You got it. Diabetes type 3 is Alzheimer's disease. Yeah. So what do? Do we keep going down this path, or do we, remember what I said to begin with? We want to do what to do what? Fix the, to get well, right? Fix the cell to get well. I mean, that's really comes down to very simple solution. Can it be done? Well, it's being proven to be done, okay? So basically we want to start to free up this, get the stuff out of this. Is it too hot in here? Because we can open the door. Yeah, so somebody mind opening the door?
Boy.
Is it just me running around? See, it's my insulin, my cell, it's a problem. It's my estrogen. I need to clean my cells up. Okay, so that's kind of just painting the picture. Now we want to talk about solutions, okay? So when you start to operate like this, we start to do, our health quotient goes down and down and down. And remember I talked about wherever there's a disease, there's an equal and opposite medication, and it becomes a country that takes 50% of the drugs, and we're still 50%, rated 50 from the word from health. If we continue to find something to counterbalance this, we're not going to really get to the source of the problem. Okay, so that's where Dr. Pompa comes in. That's to where the gentleman who won the 2016 Nobel Prize, named Dr. Yoshinori Ohsumi, he's a, Ohsumi, not Ohsumi, that's somebody else's job. But, you know, he discovered something that we already knew, but he really figured out that the body knows what to do. If you challenge the body, it will do the right thing, providing you get the toxins out and you make sure that the nerves are working correctly and that you're not suppressed by your mother-in-law. My mother-in-law is 97, lives with me, wonderful lady, but I have a list this long by the time I get home, including the pothole on the bottom of the driveway that I'm not going to fix this year. But my point is, you know, we do have, and she's not on any medications, she's 97, sharp as a whip. She was in the WAC, Women's Army Corps. She was a captain, and you know, I mean, she just bosses me around. It's like, okay, pretty wild. But why is she healthy and somebody at 40 or 30 isn't? Yeah, it's a great question, and there's some answers. Okay, so all of us, we know now that 4 generations of toxins come through our mothers, through the umbilical cord into the womb. So that means that our great-grandmother, if she was exposed to heavy metals, to leads, to mercury, to some other kind of toxins due to where she lived, the Industrial Revolution, all those things, all those toxins are stored in the bones of mom. When baby is being produced, the bone and calcium has to be dissolved. The best parts of mom are put into that baby, including all those heavy metals and toxins. So we now know that there's 287 known toxins, heavy metals, neurotoxins, chemicals that get into the baby. So why are we all still walking? Seems like, you know, we should be 6 feet under. So the genetic information is that we all have a different size bucket. It's kind of silly, but we're all born with a shot glass, a 16-ouncer, or an 8-ounce glass. That is the glass that once it fills up and spills over, we are going to get sick from genetic toxic buildup. Okay, so this person unfortunately has a very small glass, and they might all be in the same family. It's just that your genetics. We're all born with the toxins that we get back through mom. However, we do know that the first child typically gets the most, but it's not always obvious. Then we're born into different environments, okay? And, you know, we could be exposed to a lot of different chemicals via our birth process. I'm not going to go into that necessarily. There's a lot of good things and bad things that can happen. We know that glyphosate, which is Roundup, is destroying our guts. And if you don't know that, I can give you the research on it. So now we live in Santa Cruz, so we're a lot better off than a lot of other places, right? But now our own exposure, I mean, you know, I grew up in Berkeley in the 60s. So thank God I had a pretty big one of these because it would have been overflowing a long time ago. But, so can you see what happens? Once we get over here, at least the genetic, the gene that's going to be producing Alzheimer's, there's 7 Alzheimer genes we know. When that gene gets triggered, you're going to get Alzheimer's. When the cancer gene for your colon gets triggered, turned on, you're going to get colon cancer, or you're going to start to develop it. Breast cancer, all of those genetic diseases happen when inside your cell, because all of our genes are inside these cells. And they all have a light switch on them, on, off.
Every single cell has contains the
DNA. Every cell that has a DNA has the same genetic imprint as everybody else. So and we know what turns on these things is toxins inside the cells. Those bad organisms and toxins that get inside the cells, and viruses get in here and all kinds of things will turn on those bad genes. So we want to try to turn them off.
One question. Do allergies fit in that category? Do allergies also toxins?
Yeah, and that's a good question.
Reaction, I mean.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, that is a great question. So histamine. Exactly. So that's very simple, and there's a really good supplement. Anybody here ever get the Antranex? Did I give that to you for allergies and stuff? One product I've carried for 30 years is your bloodstream has the ability to carry so much of something called a histamine. Has anybody heard of those? They're called antihistamines, or pills you take to reduce them. Well, the histamines, when they go in through your blood, the liver takes them out. And they get the histamine and it takes it out, puts it in the colon outside your body. If your liver's toxic and that histamine load gets up to that level, temporarily, you're going to get a symptom. So by reducing the load of, this isn't genetic, this is like the same scenario, but today with something you're allergic to, you lower the load, you're not going to be able to have allergic reaction. So you take an antihistamine. The one that I really love is called Antranex. It's good. Anybody ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, remember the guy used Windex for everything?
Yes.
Antranex is my Windex. It's good for bee stings, spider bites, poison oak, rashes. It just takes them away so quickly. Sniffles, you know, all runny noses, it just takes them away. So that's just, again.
They're not inhaled food reactions, they're more systemic.
Well, yeah, it will help it. But, you know, I mean, if you're going to have an anaphylactic reaction, then you've got to get to it. But there is an underlying cause, if that's what you're asking. It's a body that's already too toxic. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But that's a good question.
Would you spell that Antranex?
Yeah, A-N-T-R. I have it right over there. I'll show you afterwards. I can spell it, I can't say it. Okay, so what we want to figure out how to do is, number one, it would make sense to lower the amount of toxins in this bucket, right? Because if we lower the amount of toxins in this bucket, our genes are going to be less likely to be turned on. The cellular inflammation is going to go down. We're going to have a better running machine. The exhaust is going to actually get out of the cell and into the digestive tract and out through the lungs, the skin, the kidneys, or the colon. And a good way to explain the sickness here, and I always say this, and you probably heard it on the air, but when you're driving down the road and you take a hose, stick it in your exhaust pipe, put it in the window, and you roll up the car and you're driving down the road, you'll get where you're going, but you're going to get sick. Exact same scenario on a cellular level. If we're not getting the exhaust that's being made by the energy here out of the cells and truly out of the body, then we're going to get sick eventually. And that might just be a lifetime of feeling terrible, always injuring yourself, getting every cold that ever came around, or it could be autoimmune diseases. What do you think autoimmune means? self-immune. It's fighting yourself. Now, a body that started with an egg and a sperm, and then in nine months made this beautiful little baby, providing there's no genetic defects, that's pretty amazing. And those are stem cells, right? That's one cell that differentiates into anything and everything. You get a blue eye, a white hair, you know, a left finger, and all those things out of the same cell. It's, you know, I'll give you, I have a little picture of it here. Right here. I'll bring it over. But, you know, I mean, this is how life begins, and this is what we're going to talk about in a minute, are stem cells. You know, egg and sperm come together, split, split, split. By day 8, every cell looks like every other cell. It looks like a bunch of frog eggs in a pond. Really, it does. And then all of a sudden on day 16, you see that. Where'd that come from? What's this? What are those? Those are 31 spinal nerves, the brain, the nervous system. And from there, you know, the next thing we know, we've got every cell and organ being developed out of that one egg and sperm. So what happens when one of those things gets damaged, or a nerve that pinches the nerve that gets pinched, it goes through the liver, and the liver isn't working as well anymore because the light is dim, isn't plugged in. But so what we want to do is we want to try to figure out how to clean this thing up, number one. Does that kind of make sense to y'all? Okay. So let's see if I can get beyond this slide. We talked about some of the poisons. Now, is everybody familiar? Do you want to move over a little bit? I can move your chair for you. Yeah. Here, I'll just put you down in front here. I think you'll be fine. Okay. So, everybody's familiar with the glyphosate story. If not, let me know afterwards. Basically, if you look up Dr. Sinnott, S-E-O, hi Nina, Dr. Sinnott, I have her name, but she went to she works at MIT, head of a research of MIT, one department, went to the Senate and on a huge Senate committee showing that every chronic disease goes up at the rate glyphosate's been used in our country. Glyphosate was going to have a black box warning on it in California this year. You know what that is? The Surgeon General says that, you know, smoking glyphosate is bad for your health or whatever it is. Yeah. Somehow it got taken off. It was almost done. You can take it off. Now you notice how many commercials there are for it? They're really promoting Roundup. That's what glyphosate is. Mercury poisoning is terrible. If you go fishing in California, in the lakes in California, and you get the California Fishing Guide, you're going to find out that any woman in childbearing years should only have one fish out of any lake in Northern California because of the mercury level. The mercury got in there from the gold mines because they used mercury to extract the gold. San Jose has one of the largest collection of dormant mercury mines in the world. That's why they call them mercury news. So these are toxins that we get in our mouth. It's true. These are toxins that we get in our mouth from the heavy metals that may or may not have been taken out correctly, that leak as they get older, that get into the brain. Lead and heavy metals get into your brain along with molds and other chemicals. And we talked about insulin on the brain is another term for what? Alzheimer's, I think, something like that. I almost remember. So anyway, so what we want, we know that a lot of the information in our brain through the endocrine system, the hypothalamus pituitary, drive that whole system that we went over. So we've got to talk about how to detoxify it. So we know about that. You be careful what you eat. Even this box of organic waffles, when I was reading the labels, I loved everything it said here, you know, no preservatives, blah, blah, blah. But what really got me was that line right there that said, no sewage sludge on fields.
No what?
Sewage sludge on fields. That's right here. And you know, you got to ask yourself, if one company's saying they're not using sewage sludge, what are other companies not saying? why are we getting toxic? Why are we so sick? Why are we rated 50th in the world for health? And we should be the healthiest world in the world if we really wanted to use what we knew to help people rather than to possibly line the pockets of somebody. So this is the leaky bucket syndrome. Now we can use this in one of two ways. We can talk about when your bucket fills over, you're going to get sick. So you can lower the bucket and keep it low and probably not develop chronic genetic life-altering diseases. But the other way to look at it is leaky gut syndrome. And this is, somebody was asking about Restore.
Yes.
I think that was you. So we know that 95% of the people in our country have something called intestinal permeability. That's what the medical people call it. People on the other side of the aisle call it leaky gut. Simply because of the foods we've eaten, the irritating foods, the antibiotics that we've taken in our life that are destroying the microbiome, those little life sources in our body, in our digestive system. They've been wiped out. The chemicals we drink, the alcohol that we've consumed, the medications that we take chronically. I mean, I have one patient on 20 meds right now. It's terrible. One's fighting the other, fighting the other. She's doing this with that battle between wherever there's a symptom, there's an equal and opposite medication. Pretty soon they're fighting, the body's gone. The drugs are going to still be fighting, but it also, medications are linked to Alzheimer's as well. So leaky gut syndrome, leaky brain syndrome. There's a barrier. This would be the food going down and out. As these little nutrients come in, they go through the intestine and become nutrients in our body. But as these get blown apart from all of the bad things and we get swollen and we get allergies are usually particles that are, come in through the digestive system. Then you get one little particle here and it blows you over the top. But before that little thing came, you were already pretty inflamed. So if we can get rid of the inflammation, we can fix the cell and get you well. Okay, bottom line. The blood-brain barrier operates the same way. There's a protective, like plastic sac around your brain, and it has little teeny holes in it, kind of like a sieve in your kitchen sink, and it's only supposed to let in certain things. Well, glyphosate comes and other chemicals come, and it's like taking a screwdriver and poking holes in that sieve, and then trying to sieve what you want. You're going to get other things through there. That's where we get molds, bacteria, viruses, and all kinds of stuff into our brain. Heavy metals pushing them in further and causing the plaque buildup that the insulin is putting in there, causing Alzheimer's as well as other kind of dementias. Okay? So now we need to talk about what to do to fix it. And we could go on and on.
Well, do you have this Restore, or do we just buy it?
You buy it at the health food store.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can get it at Staff of Life. I don't think Whole Foods has it.
Amazon has it.
Who does?
Amazon.
Oh, at Amazon. But if you want to do local, Staff of Life has it. New Leaf has it. Some of those regular health food stores. So this is what the microbiome looks like. And this is a really good slide to look at, because a lot of times if you go to the health food store and you get a bottle of the same probiotic, Acidophilus and bifidus, that you've been eating for years. Remember, in the old days, the medical doctors didn't even talk about it. They just said, take the antibiotic, you'll get well. What was that antibiotic addressing? It was addressing some bacteria, but the goal was to get you well, all right? So, and then you would wipe out all the bacteria. We know that the bacteria feed us, so if we're wiping out all the bacteria, are we really working on the right thing? Today, science says it ain't the person we gotta fix, it's the bacteria we gotta fix. There's there's billions of different types of bacteria in our digestive system, on our skin, in our mouth, and there's good ones and bad ones.
Is that a real picture right there?
I couldn't tell you. Sure looks good though, doesn't it? See, I
She's
told
colorful.
It probably is, because I got it out of a science book, and I don't know if they're really that color or not, but you can see they're different. And there are even some even some parasites that are now being thought to be good for us. They actually do good things. So there's good ones and bad ones. So if you're taking what we call one particular brand, you get what's called a monoculture, and it looks like that, and you don't have a defense system in your digestive system. It can only handle one thing. So we want to learn how to build this up, and there's a lot of parts about the multi-therapeutic approach that we started this conversation with that will really help with that, okay? And we want to talk about fixing this problem, okay? Because we kind of talked about, we all know we have a problem. Maybe I've defined it a little better, that the cellular inflammation is causing the organs to get overloaded, and it's turning on bad genes, and we get sick. Is that kind of, so that's what I tried to say. If you didn't get that, sick cells make sick people. So if we want to get unsick people, we got to fix this cell. Good. So now we're talking about something called a three-legged stool of health, and it's pretty simple. I'm not a really good artist, but the first one is stressors, and this is pretty easy. Okay, stressors are physical, pinched nerve. Pinching the nerve that goes to your liver is not going to work right no matter what. Okay, that's physical. It's hard bone on soft nerve. Everybody's got some kind of pinched nerve. They may not feel it because only 10% is pain, 90% is organ function, body temperature, limb position, vibration, hot, cold, various things. So you might have a bone out of place pressing a nerve, which we probably all do, and not have any pain. But you might have symptoms other than that. The second one of the stressors we've been talking about all night, which is chemicals. Heavy metals predominantly drive it. Then we get molds, which are horrendous. I mean, I don't know if you ever read the Bible, but the Bible says if you